So we have two methods so far of solving a quadratic equation. I told you we were going to talk about four methods. So the first method is solve by factoring. Second method was solve using the square root property. But not everything is factorable, and not everything is set up to use the square root property. So sometimes we have this situation where we couldn't use either of those. So the third method we're going to talk about is called completing the square. Now, in the last video, we had something like x minus 4 squared equals 5. And we took the square root of both sides, and we put the plus or minus in, right? And we said this, then we brought the 4 over, and we had x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 5. We got two answers, and that's what they were. So what we want is we want to have a situation like this. We want to set it up so we have this, because we know we can take the square root of both sides then. Okay, so now here comes my problem right here. It's a quadratic equation. It is not factorable, so check to see if you can factor it, but you can't. There aren't two numbers that multiply before and add to be 1. All right, so we're going to have to use another method. To complete the square, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1, get that out of there. Now notice I left a little space. Okay, so the idea is we want to create a perfect square trinomial. We talked about those. Okay, so if we have a perfect square trinomial, it'll factor into, like we had those, we said if you have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, it factors into, I should have left more room, a plus b squared. See, that's what we're trying to get. So we need this situation to happen, okay? And here's how we're going to make it happen. We have the power. We can control it. You're going to look at the coefficient of the middle term. You're going to take that 4, you're going to divide it by 2, and then you're going to square it. So it's two things you have to do. You have to divide by 2 because of the 2 right there, and then you have to square it because you want to get this part right there. Okay? All right, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. I call that the magic number. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Now, here's why I call it the magic number. Now I have completed the square. This part over here is now going to be a perfect square trinomial. It factors into x plus 4 times x plus 4 if you want to write it that way, or if you want to think about this happening over here, that's x plus 4 squared. Okay, and that's what we were hoping to get. Now, okay, that's great. So we completed the square. I didn't really talk about adding 4 to both sides, but you have to add 4 to both sides. See, we came up with the number we needed. We needed a 4. That was that process. So we put the 4 in, but you have to add it to both sides. Okay, equals, now you got to figure this part out. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Okay, great. Now it's very similar to the original problem we had over here. In fact, even the numbers are similar, right? Okay, now I can take the square root of both sides. So I take the square root, take the square root. Don't forget the plus or minus. Okay, and now I have x plus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 3. That doesn't simplify, the radical doesn't simplify, so I'm going to be bringing the 4 over. It's going to go right in front of the plus or minus. I'm going to have x equals negative 4, because I brought it over, plus or minus the square root of 3. And if you're going to write them separate, you write negative 4 minus the square root of 3, negative 4 plus the square root of 3. Okay, I'll probably get tired of doing that, but those are the answers for that problem. All right, so I have another example here, one we could work on. So we have x squared minus 6x. I'm going to leave a little space for the magic number. I don't know how magic it is, but anyway. So how do I complete the square? How do I get the left side to be a perfect square trinomial? All right, I take the 6. So I take this. Oh, it's negative, but that doesn't really matter. So I I shouldn't say that. But anyway, I'll keep it a negative 6. I divide it by 2, and then I have to square it. So it's always two things. You're going to take that coefficient on the x term, divide it by 2, and square it. So I get negative 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, 9's the number then. I'm going to add 9 to the left, and I'm going to add 9 to the right. Okay. So then what do we get? On the left, I'm going to go ahead and factor it. It's going to factor into something squared. Now, this is going to be have a leading coefficient of 1. I can talk about that later on, but it's going to be x. It's going to be minus in this case because of that subtraction sign. And then how do I get that other number? It's the square root of 9. Now, if you were to FOIL that left side out, you would get this trinomial here, okay? So you'd have x squared, and then you'd have a negative 3x and a negative 3x. That would be the negative 6x, and then you'd have the plus 9. Okay, so that's what's happening on the left. It's how it factors. Now what happens on the right? Well, 13 and 9 is what, 22? Okay, now I can take the square root of both sides. I've completed the square, yay. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And I get x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 22. Now 22 is 2 times 11, but I can't get a square root out of that, so I'm done simplifying the radical. The 3 is going to come over as a positive 3, so I get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 22. What you're doing when I draw that arrow, you're adding 3 to both sides. Okay, there we go. That was a long video.